Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels, and we are jumping back into the new series, as promised, that I will be starting to do on my call center weekends, which are Tuesdays and Wednesdays. That's right, folks. We're getting back to autistic in the workplace. What's beyond autism awareness? Remember, this is a particular series that we are starting that's going to end up being two-pronged, but the first several videos is going to be establishing a foundation before they begin to branch off, which is what we're doing here. You'll see in the description box a link to this article from psychiatry.org. We're going over essentially what autism is, and as the mood strikes me, I might bring up a few examples. A lot of my examples are going to come from the call center. You're going to hear a lot of call center terminology. I do try to explain it as best as I can, but in my defense, my two primary areas that I have been an expert in the last few years is call center work and working for the Missouri Department of Mental Health under the Division of DD. So, forgive me for that, all right? Okay, we're going to start back where we left off. It's still on the same article. We may skip some parts. I will let you know as we go through it, okay? Before we do, though, course, kids, trigger warning. Number one, this channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We use a profanity on occasion, and with some of our videos, we do speak on some pretty dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, very obviously, parental supervision is very much advised, all right? Also, trigger warning 2. There may be profanity when you are watching this series. I am a army brat whose stepdad helped raise me, who's also a truck driver. An army brat from both sides for the grandpas. You see where we're going here, right? There will be cursing. If your kids are young or you don't like profanity, please don't mean that that's going to turn you off from this subject. Please take a look at the article in the description box. Much like the JRC videos, as we go through more and more in the series, you'll see more and more links start popping up in the description box. So, let's get going, folks. All right. Parent, caregiver, teacher concerns about the child's behavior should lead to specialized evaluation by a developmental pediatrician, pediatric psychologist, child neurologist, and/or child and adolescent psychiatrist. I've gone under such an evaluation in my life 4 times. 4. The first one occurred when I was in the second grade, when I was misdiagnosed with attention deficit disorder. There was no ADHD at that time, it was just called ADD. And yeah, I did study it, and I studied it young, and I did science experiments based off of it. So, yeah. If anybody is a nerd for their own neurology, it would be me. Just saying. Okay. But they're talking about here what this evaluation is that is brought together by a team. It's something we've gone over in the JRC videos. It's a full functional behavioral assessment. And we've gone over what those all cover. Now, that's not going to be featuring primary in this series because we're talking like post transition of services age. But hopefully, as we begin to diversify the channel, we'll start getting some more stuff in here. But let's continue, shall we? This evaluation involves interviewing the parent caregiver, observing and interacting with the child in a structured manner, and sometimes conducting additional tests to rule out other disorders. Now, if you were a older adolescent, as I was when I was diagnosed, none of those things happened. Doesn't mean it wasn't a properly done full functional behavioral assessment. It's because as you get older, what those evaluation looks like begins to change as you age. You don't need to observe someone who's telling you exactly what they're doing, right? Info dumping is a thing. In some ambiguous cases, the diagnosis of autism may be deferred, but an early diagnosis can greatly improve a child's functioning by providing family early access to the supportive resources in the community. Now, here's the thing, folks, it's a double edged sword, early intervention. Is it crucial? You bet your ass it is. But how you choose to go about early intervention is going to be something that's going to follow your child for the rest of their known lives. I'm primarily familiar of one of two things. You either go the ABA route or the ARC route. And what does the ARC route look like? And do some people who are a part of the ARC Autism Services use ABA? Yes, they do. But the primary thing that they push is person centered planning, which means some of the same individuals that might have been involved with your full behavioral functional assessment as mine were, my aunt, my mom, my stepdad. That was a fun day. Find out what your family really thinks of you in a full 1 hour single setting. You get what I'm saying, folks. Right? Supportive resources doesn't always automatically equal ABA. Early intervention does not always equal ABA. In fact, thankfully, there is a small trickle of parents who are seeing what ABA looks like. They look at the face, not the not the Facebook, good God, the YouTube videos, and decide that that's demeaning, it's dehumanizing, it's othering and isolating. So they tend to go more towards the direction of occupational therapy, speech therapy when needed, ASL language, if that's going to be the better way to communicate, especially if you're dealing with someone with issues of being nonverbal, and they go that route. Either way, early intervention is crucial, yes. But how you go about it, parents, and the way that's going to follow us into the workplace later, yeah, there will be a series on that eventually. The first step is seeking an evaluation. Most parents start with their pediatrician who is checking on developmental milestones. Here's the thing though, everybody's got the Cliff Notes version of autism. We went over that in the last video, right? Yeah. Most parents don't know to ask for a full functional behavioral assessment, let alone an evaluation. This is where the schools come in. This is why schools need to be better informed on how to deal with something when they suspect it could be autism or another ND disability. Right? Speak to the parents, but don't just kick the can down the road and say, we can't do it. They're too disabled and out of control. Sorry. Give them a referral so that the doctor can, the parents know to ask for the evaluation. Because that's what happened with me. Teachers told aunt, aunt told mom. A full functional behavioral assessment was done. How we went about planning the treatment program from there. Sorry. We're going to start skipping through a few parts. They're not necessarily part of this subject that we're covering here. See if you're going over the treatment programs. I'm going to read over the tips for parents maybe another time. But you see, neurodivergence, ADHD. When I told you JD is one of us, JD is one of us. Social communication, specific learning disorder, intellectual disability. Okay, so this kind of pretty much covers it, doesn't it? It gives you a good base to operate off of, that is true. But now the question becomes, we've read this, okay. So when are we going to get to the practical application? I'm glad you asked. Not today. Sorry, I had to. So you have this head knowledge. So now, if you're a manager, you now have to almost retrain your brain when dealing with someone like me who's autistic and your employee. Almost like a brain rewiring, almost. There are a few core things you need to really internalize and wrap your brain around, and then start applying it in regards to performance. Communication issues, the stigma that a lot of us feel for asking for help. That's going to be a big barrier. We're going to go over that, how you can overcome that. Number 3, stop with the comparing of us to our neurotypical fellow employee peers. It's a false equivalency. Again, I'll use the call center. You can't sit there and tell me that everybody else who has higher numbers than me, telling them, but they're doing something you're not. Duh. And you are pulling from the same calls. There's no reason why your numbers shouldn't be where theirs are. Yeah, there is. There's a huge one. It's called I'm not neurotypical. That employee is not neurotypical. To compare them to their neurotypical peers and expect them to perform in the same way, doing it the same way as them, is never going to work. For the love of God, folks, it's a recipe for failure. Because what you're going to do instead is, now you've got the autistic employee and they are now hyper focused on the fact that they may be fired, instead of hyper focusing on something different, such as, well, maybe if I really just hyper focus on closing no matter what. I can't do that because you already threatened. There's the sword of Damocles over my neck. And for the rest of the perceivable future, unless something changes, my numbers will not improve. That's not how it works. I don't care if it's good motivation in sales for everybody else. You got to start wrapping your brains around the fact that we are not everyone else. We don't function the same way. We don't communicate the same way. And we don't sell the same way. We don't do fast food the same way. We're not accountants the same way. Don't compare your autistic employee and our performance to that of our neurotypical peers. You are setting us up to fall off a cliff, right? That's what we mean by getting beyond autism awareness. Okay, you've got cliff notes. We need to flesh it out and start working on practical application. And practical application all begins here. Okay? There's no going through the motions with doing this type of thing. It begins here. You have to start changing your thought process when dealing with your autistic employee. Because the things you use to motivate neurotypicals are not going to motivate us. They may make us paranoid as fuck and anxiety ridden, anxious, emotional, near meltdown train wreck. Who won't improve their numbers because we're too focused on how bad we're doing because that's what you're harping on. You understand? And when we hyper focus on something, we close out everything else. Not because we want to, but that's part of our diagnosis. So we got to stop with the threatening crap. It's not motivating. It doesn't help. More often than not, in any given work situation that I've experienced similar, it makes it worse. And then you end up with the situation that I was in with my current boss, where I was just extremely resentful and paranoid, you know? So the beginning always starts here. We're going to go into a little bit more detail in regards to that coming up next weekend. But for now, folks, we're going to go ahead and close out. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few we do tend to get removed from time to time. So, folks, you know the drill. Please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to utilize those comments. I appreciate your time this afternoon. As always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. I'm hopefully get in an early pool day so I can escape the kids taking over and splashing every inch of the pool area. Bye bye, everyone. They are actually cute to watch, by the way, folks. It's just, ah, what can I say? I like a pool to myself. Bye bye now.